If you've ever played an MMORPG like MapleStory, you've probably wondered if you could brick your account. And I don't think you could brick your account in MapleStory, but there's definitely some big mistakes that you could avoid, and that's what this video is going to be about. I've been playing for a very, very long time, and specifically in the Heroic reboot worlds, I've been playing Heroic since it came out, and I have seen so many people come and go throughout the game, and these are some of the mistakes that I would personally avoid. Or if you have a friend coming into the game, maybe remind them of these things so that their playthrough of the game could be a little bit more enjoyable and you avoid quitting the game or just getting really frustrated in general. The first one we gotta talk about is picking the right class. I have talked about this subject extensively on my channel, but it is so important to pick the right class for you. In my honest opinion, gun to my head, if somebody were to ask me, how do I figure out what class I play? I would literally do this. I would go on the character select screen, look at the character splash arts, and choose which one I think looks the coolest. Like, not knowing anything of the game. Like, straight up just choosing the one that I think would look nice. So let's say, for example, I really like how Evan's aesthetic is for some reason, right? So then I would also do this. I would go on YouTube and type in MapleStory Evan and just watch a bunch of Evan videos. Even something like this, MapleStory Evan Spring 2, like just an Evan training or something like that, to see what the skills look like, to see what it's capable of. I would do stuff like this to figure out what class that I want to play. It is so important to choose the right class for you. You might not always get it right the first time, but make sure that you are doing as much research as you can on the classes so that you can pick. You might not narrow it down to one, you might narrow it down to 3 or 5 classes. And at that point, this is what I would do. I would go on Twitch and ask a streamer which class they think I should play and hear what they say. Which class should I play? I'm new to the game, Evan, Mercedes, or Kane, and let's see what the streamer says.
Which class should I play? I'm new to the game, Evan, Mercedes, or Kane. Don't play any of those. Play Nightwalker. It's broken. Does the most damage. It's the only way you're going to get into the party.
Okay, so you heard what he said. He said to play Nightwalker. Now, that actually perfectly leads me to my next point on choosing a class. Obviously, that streamer was being very sarcastic, but that sarcasm comes from a certain truth in the game. Currently, Nightwalker and Bishop are some of the best classes, probably the best classes in terms of damage and bossing performance, right? And you'll find that a lot of times on this game, people are just going to recommend you to play the absolute strongest class or the best party class. I personally would not recommend going that route all the time. I would highly recommend playing a class that you like visually, because at the end of the day, you will spend thousands of hours on that class. And even if it's not super optimal in terms of a party or in terms of solo bossing or whatever, or in terms of the meta, at least you still enjoy playing the class because you like how it looks and you like how it feels, which is the most important thing. Every single class in this game gets buffs and nerfs and everything in between, but at the end of the day, if you like the way the class looks, you won't have any problem playing it. The other reason why it's so important to play a class that you like is because of the way that the game gives you rewards. So for example, during this hyper burning event, you have all these rewards that you can claim. But if you were to choose the wrong class, I'm sure some of you might have experienced this or know somebody who picked a class that they regret. They claim all the rewards and they feel like they're kind of stuck on this character because they already put the rewards on it. And if you were to hypothetically go on a different character, then your progression is way slower because all of the event rewards were already used on this character. So if you know somebody who's new to the game, that's trying to find a main, maybe send them this video and it'll help them get better directed towards a main that they actually would want to enjoy. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is ignoring your dailies. Now, I have seen this a lot, actually. I get it. There's a lot of dailies you have to do, especially when you're not max Arcane Force. A lot of Arcane Force dailies to do. A lot of Sacred Force dailies to do. A lot of daily bosses to do. Helix and Pink Bean and Arcarium and all these different bosses, right? I get it. There's a lot of dailies to do in this game. But I've seen people who just want to grind and they don't do their dailies. The thing is, dailies are so incredibly important on this game. And in fact, they actually give you way more damage than pretty much anything that you could do. because bosses and maps have requirements to do damage in those bosses or those maps. So for example, if I hover over this map, it says 360 above bottom deck passage 5, right? What does that mean? So what that means is I need to have at least 360 sacred force to deal normal damage in this map. And the way to get that is through your dailies. So you will pretty much be progression bricked if you don't do your dailies. They are so incredibly important. This even goes way back to Arcane River. Like these maps require 80 arcane force, right? And it's the same thing. If I don't have at least 80 arcane force, I'm not going to do any damage in these maps. So it's really, really, really important to do your dailies. And it's actually very beneficial for you because it saves you time from training in the long run, because dailies give you a tremendous amount of XP. Another very, very important daily that I see people often forgetting or avoiding is Monster Park. And I know, I get it. Monster Park does take a long time, especially if you're not super strong, but it's very, very important. When you're later into the game, these Monster Park coins that you use to buy red, green, and gold pots, you're actually not going to have enough. You're going to need to do Monster Park every day, and you're going to wish you did it because these potions are so useful. I'm sure some of you guys know some people that train with a green potion on because it increases your attack speed and makes all of your skills and movement more fluid. And some classes like Aran, for example, would really want to use a green pot while training, or a hero while training. And eventually you're going to be training a lot, so you're going to need these potions. It's not just for bossing. You're going to need them for everything. Now, this next daily, I'm very guilty of skipping as well, to be honest with you. I'll be the first to admit it, is the Ursus daily. Ursus is one of the most time-efficient ways to get mesos on this game. It'll take less than 10 minutes, and you could make like 100 mil. Or way less than 10 minutes, to be honest with you. And in terms of baso per hour, it's way more than farming. And if you do it throughout an entire month, you can make over 3 bill mesos in no time at all. So definitely make sure you do your Ursus as well. Now, this next one is a little bit weird because I just talked about making sure to do all of your dailies. But with that in mind, you want to make sure that you don't burn out. Burning out is incredibly common on this game, and it always happens from people trying to do too much altogether. So let me explain. Let's say you're like this guy, Giga Taco 5, who's training a lot. He trains a lot. He trains so many hours every single day, and he does his dailies and everything, right? But if you were to ask him, and if you were to ask me, this is not a recommended type of play style for most people, because when you're forcing yourself to train every single day, especially if you don't like it, now he likes to train, I like to train, you're gonna burn out. In general on this game, if you force yourself to do things that you don't want to do, you're going to burn out. The way that I like to think of burning out is like this. Burning out on this game is like a gauge. If the gauge fills up all the way to the top, you're cooked. There's no coming back. You're done. So you need to constantly manage this mental gauge of burning out. So whether it's your dailies that add a little bit to the burnout, whether it's your training, right? Your WAPs, it adds a little bit to the burnout. Whether it's Legion, it adds a little bit to the burnout. Everybody experiences this in their own way. So you have to be very conscious of what you're doing on this game. If you really don't like something, a lot of people don't like Legion, for example, or a lot of people don't like farming a lot. Just don't do it. It's simple. Because if you keep forcing yourself to do it, you're going to reach the top and you're done. You're going to burn out, and we're not going to see you for like months until the next update or something like that. So just make sure that you do what you want to do. Everything that people say, whether it's, oh, go do your Legion, go do your dailies, go do your WAPs, go farm, all that stuff. We're all telling you to do this while keeping in mind you don't want to force yourself too much because you're going to burn out. It's true. Farming and doing your dailies and Legion, all that stuff, it will make you progress so much faster. But if you do it too much, you're actually going to progress way slower because you're going to burn out. The next thing that I want to talk about is being too greedy. You will constantly see, especially if you're in a Discord, you will constantly see people posting in their flex channels or their fails channels. And a lot of the times that people are failing to succeed in their gains is because they are too greedy. Now, what do I mean by greedy? Let's just talk about star forcing for a second. I see this all the time during events. People having this mentality of it's 22 stars or nothing, but they don't have the mesos that are needed to hit 22 stars. I would highly recommend using calculators. There are so many resources out there, so many calculators and everything like that. This guy's website, Brendan May, has so many calculators that just help you understand how much things cost on this game on average. So let's say, for example, I want to get my CRA top to 22 stars. So CRA top is level 150. It's a normal item. Of course, we're going to star catch because we're smart, and we're not going to safeguard because we have a lot of spares. Right now, it's at 15 stars, and we're trying to get it to 22. No MVP discount. We play on GMS, and it's a 5, 10, 15 event. Calculate. So you're going to see it says average cost 9 bill, median cost around 7 bill. Want to look at the median? The median is actually more accurate. So 7 bill, right? 7 bill median to get my CRA top to 22 stars. So what that means is somebody who goes into an event with 10 bill mesos, are you going to hit 22? Maybe, but if you don't, you can understand why you don't, because it's just a median, right? You're not going to always hit the median. You're probably not going to. You're probably going to go over on some items, and you're probably going to go under on some items. If you want to guarantee yourself gains, you want to always look at how much money you have. So let's say I want to settle at 21 stars, significantly less meso, 4 bill. So if you have 10 bill messes going into the same event, getting 21 stars is way higher likelihood than getting 22 stars. And it's actually okay to settle when you don't have that much money. I myself am guilty of always telling people, you gotta tap, you gotta tap, you gotta tap, you gotta be stronger, you gotta be stronger. But that's to people who farm a lot. People who don't farm a lot and they don't have that much money, you have to be very wise with your money, and you have to know when to settle. I see it all the time because there's a culture, to be honest, there's a culture around tapping to 22, and you see streamers like myself and friends and all this stuff, and you go to the flex channel in your Discord and people are hitting so many 22 stars and you feel like you're not hitting. But at the end of the day, it's all a cost. It's all math. And if you don't have the money to justify going for 22, then you need to settle. My Night Lord, for example, this is my Hyperburn. I didn't have enough money last Shining Star Force to reasonably go for 22. So I settled 21 on the top. And on my pants, I couldn't get it past 17, so I just stay there. And on my Apsos, I just got them to 20 stars instead of trying to go for full 22 stars. You want to be honest with yourself with the money, and you want to do your due diligence of checking the calculators to see what you can reasonably expect during these events. Obviously, the calculator is not an end-all be-all, but it's good to know these numbers just so you can have an expectation of what your money is going to get you. On the flip side, though, this is very important to talk about. Some people look at the calculators as gospel. If they go even a single meso above the median or average, they will tilt off the planet. If they go even a single meso, oh, I'm over average. I'm over average. I'm going to quit. Oh my God, I'm over average on this item. But the funniest part is these same players will never talk about them going under average. But that's just the way this game is. Sometimes you're going to go under, sometimes you're going to go over, and people will only ever talk about going over. So a big advice I can give you is to not take it too seriously when people are constantly talking about how unlucky they are, because I promise you they are not as unlucky as they're making themselves out to be. Getting full 22 star gear is not, this might be a hot take to be honest with you. Getting full 22 star gear is not just a luck based thing. It's not just pure luck. You can prepare for it if you get enough mesos and enter an event accordingly. Don't Star Force off event. Don't not star catch. Don't have under the amount of money that you need. If you do all of those three things, you will probably hit full 22 because you prepared for it properly, and people are just going to call you lucky, but no, you actually prepared for it properly. It's actually the exact same thing for cubing. Very often you will hear people saying, I need to hit double prime. I need to hit double prime. You actually don't need to hit these things. In fact, cubing, it's actually okay to settle even more than starring. Starring gives you a lot of damage, but cubing, it's okay to settle 2 line, 2.5 lines, 1 line on your gear. It's perfectly fine. So let's say we're starring an arcane shoe, and we want to get the arcane shoe to 30%. We're probably going to see 30%. If you look at the percentile here, we're probably going to have within a 75% chance within like 5 to 6 bill. So even with cubing, you can have an expectation if you use these calculators. It's with everything. It's not just cubing, starring. You could do it with flaming as well. Once you start wanting to go for double prime, that's when it gets way more expensive, way more exponentially expensive. This leads me to my next point actually with the whole double priming. It's this concept that you're going to encounter in the game of seeing what endgamers do and applying it to yourself. Now, obviously you can gain a lot of wisdom from watching an endgamer play this game, seeing how they progress, seeing how they navigate the game, what their priorities are and stuff like that. But it's very important to keep in mind that what an endgamer does is not necessarily the same as what somebody who's in the early game does. So for example, me having a double primed belt, right, 12-12-9, does not mean that when you're cubing your belt, you should hard roll for 12-12-9. No, this is something that you slowly work up towards over time. Or me having like 22-star arcanes, for example, you don't necessarily get the arcanes and then just send them to 22. You know, I had them at 17 for a while, and then 19, and then 22, right? You work up towards these things. You don't necessarily just hard roll for them. A lot of people, you're going to see them just constantly cubing their emblem, for example. This is a Mitra's Rage, right? The best emblem that you can get. Most people will get this emblem and then boom, all their money is just going to be spent on trying to hard roll 3-line attack on it. No, it's actually okay to settle and to not just force yourself to have to get the perfect pot right away. You don't need to do that. Even if you see end gamers, they have 100 bill, 200 bill in their inventory and they're just non-stop cubing, hard rolling to try and get 3-line. It's okay to not do that right away. So if you know people who are doing that type of stuff and they're not end gamers, they don't have crazy income and crazy mesos, just tell them to, you know, chill out a little bit, because they're potentially going to be wasting a lot of money and then not hit what they want to hit because the cost is so high. They didn't really look at how expensive something is. They kind of just saw somebody that they looked up to do that, and they're gonna not have a good time. The last one that I want to talk about is very important, and it's not trying out bosses. I have seen a lot of people rage quit, in particular on Lotus. I have seen this so many times where people have tried to do Lotus and they just rage quit, and then people who do Lotus, they'll rage quit on Dark now instead. So what do I mean by not trying bosses? Very often on this game, people have the expectation of boss fights are not going to take that long and you're just going to blow through all of them. All these baby bosses in the game, Zack, Magnus, Hilla, Pierre, not Von Bon. Von Bon's really scary. Queen, CHT. A lot of these bosses, when you're very early into the game, you're just going to one tap them, right? You're just going to kill them super quickly and you're going to go on. And it starts to develop this mindset of like, you know, these bosses are really easy, so I'm just going to keep going, blowing up bosses. And then reality sets in and you get hard walled by like Hard Lotus, or you get hard walled by like Hard Dark now. And then once the person reaches these bosses, they're like, okay, so I have to try a little bit, but they don't understand that they have to actually try a lot harder than they did before. I have constantly seen people come into my chat and say, any tips on Dark now? Any tips on Lotus? And I asked them how many times have they practiced. They're like, I've only probably practiced like 2-3 times. And then I tell them like, you just need to practice more, like straight up. Because 2-3 times, it's not going to cut it anymore. Trust me, when you get later into the game and you do harder bosses like Kalos and Culling, it's not going to take 2-3 runs. Sometimes you're going to take dozens of runs to clear the boss. And that's just how it is. That's normal. Don't feel bad if you just can't clear in 1 or 2 tries. A lot of people go through so many tries. You know, when I first soloed H-Will back in the day, it took me 50 attempts. 50 attempts. And practice mode, you could only run 5 times back then. And I had to fully buff every single time. Nowadays, they changed the way practice mode works in the latest update. You could click this practice mode button. You go to practice mode settings. You could set all the buffs that you want. And then when you enter the boss, all the buffs are there at the top right. So you can actually just spam practice every single boss in this game as much as you want. It's a huge resource, and it makes you so much better at the game. So please try and actually use the practice mode and try the bosses. I promise you, the game isn't as hard as it might seem when you're at these bosses if you just practice a little bit. And worst case scenario, you could just always pull up a stream like my stream and just ask for help in the boss. Or maybe I have a guide, you know, like for example with V-Hilla, I have a V-Hilla guide you could just watch. Black Mage, I have a guide for that as well. And more bosses coming soon to help you with your bossing. It's so important to clear these bosses as early as possible because it'll allow you to start getting better loot in the game. The person who starts doing H-Lucid, H-Will, and Siege Timbers bosses earlier is going to finish their arcanes earlier probably because they're going to get drops earlier. So it's really important, and it'll make your progression way faster and way easier if you do your bosses and you practice as early as possible. With that all being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. These are just general things that I've seen throughout all the years of playing MapleStory that have caused people to quit or get really frustrated with the game. If this video helped you out, maybe consider helping me out by subscribing or sharing the video or watching some of my other videos. If you want to talk to me directly, I always stream on Twitch almost every single day. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much to my beautiful members, Blazefire, Shooms, Uju, Shagad, Ravi Espa, Grim4K, Koga, Pabo, Picolneer, Jesse, Dante Victory, Zats, and CK. I appreciate you guys so much.